I wish to enjoin all of you to keep practicing with all your might until the very last bell of the session. Just record this. Uh, yes, as I was saying, our session is going on very well. And enjoin you, please, to keep practicing until the very last bell of the session. Keep practicing with all your might. This is really a perfect opportunity for us to meet our true face to face. One announcement. I think we are celebrating a lunch, a virtual lunch, no? And maybe a bit of sharing after the last bell. So please stay around after the session. For today's station, I would like to say a few words on case number 10 of the Mumonkan, otherwise known as the Gateless Gate. The title of this koan is Seizei, the Poor. Seizei, the Poor. And now the verse. A monk, Seizei, eagerly asked Master Sosan, I am solitary and poor. I beg you, Master, please help me to become prosperous. Sosan said, Venerable Sei. Yes, Master, replied Sei. San said, You have already drunk 3 cups of fine Hakka wine, and still you say that you haven't moistened your lips. Momon's commentary. Seizei is obsequious in tone, but what is his real intention? Sosan has the penetrating eye and thoroughly discerns the monk's state of mind. Be that as it may, please tell me, where and how was Venerable Sei drunk his wine? When and how was Venerable Seizei drunk in 3 cups of fine Hakka wine? The verse. Poor like Hantan, of a spirit like Ko. Though they cannot sustain themselves, they dare to compete with each other for wealth. A very interesting case, no? Talking about being alone and poor. First, let's look at the people involved in this koan. First of all, we find a monk named Seizei. We don't have much information about him. In fact, this is the only koan in which he appears. But apparently, he was a senior monk because if you remember the case, Sosan used the adjective venerable to address him, Venerable Zei. And according to our notes, there is really a distinct meaning for this term venerable. In I think in Sanskrit, the term is shari, something like that. Let me see. Yes, of course, a monk called venerable must have been practicing for a long time, maybe at least 10 years, maybe more. And most of the time, the venerable is the head monk of a monastery. This person asking the question from Sosan seems to be well regarded in his community, maybe a leader. Says here that Shari, the honorific name Shari, usually he is the monk who corrects the deeds and manners of the other monks. So it's like really the head monk. Definitely uh, advance his practice. Now, in this case, um, we can intuit, we can see that this monk is really practicing very hard based on this question. Maybe even practicing to the point of desperation, point of desperation. So he asks his master, Sosan, this question. I am poor, alone and poor. Please help me to become prosperous. Now let us look at Sosan, Master Sosan. As you know, we our lineage belongs to the Soto school of Zen. The name Soto is taken from two names, a shortcut of two names. So, meaning Sosan, this is Sosan, and Tozan. Tozan is the founder of the sect, Soto sect. And Sosan is his Dharma disciple, meaning they're probably seeing the same way, they're seeing true nature in the same way. Sosan. Now, Sosan carried on after Tosan died. And he was much revered to the point that they used So as the one of the names of the founders, Sosan. Unfortunately, we don't find many koans in which Sosan figures. This is one of the three, as far as I know, feature Sosan. It's a pity because from the other koans that we've seen about him, we can really savor his clarity and his sharpness. As an example, I'll read to you case number 52 of the Shoyoroku. Here, we find time it's Sosan who's asking a monk, senior monk again, named Toku. He's asking this question. The true Dharma body of Buddha is like the empty sky. It manifests form according to things, just like the moon and the water. How do you explain the principle of this corresponding? Toku said, it is like just like a donkey looking into a well. Just like a donkey looking into the well. And Sosan replies, you have put it in a very nice way, but you're only able to see 80%. 80%. The monk said, Toku said, then master, how would you say it? Sosan said, it is like a well looking up at the donkey. The well looking up at the donkey. Can you see the beauty of this koan? And the sharpness, clarity, looking into a well, donkey looking into a well looking into the donkey. So this is the kind of master we're talking about here. Definitely a great master. Now, let's go to the koan proper. We find Seisei with a very sincere request, statement and request. First, he says, I am alone and poor. Alone. Solitary. A state that we find ourselves in whenever we sit and penetrate the depths of our being. Solitary. The state that Shakyamuni found himself in when he sat down beneath the Bodhi tree without any family, without any friends, without any Sangha. If you recall, at this point, even the 5 ascetics who were practicing with Shakyamuni had deserted him, ostracized, meaning they snubbed him because they saw him taking milk from Sujata, the goat herder. He was all alone. Solitary, the way we feel sometimes, maybe not so often, but sometimes, the way we feel when it seems that the whole world, our friends, our family, everyone included, seems to be going against us. In fact, we might say that during these times, uh, each of us, maybe even society itself, feels so lost and alone with all of these knockdowns, with the virus hovering around us. Even, you know, in daily life, we feel this loneliness. For a fact, I know some of my friends have this feeling, no? Alone, alone, totally alone. This reality that knows at our innards as we struggle to the dark night of the soul, our dark night of the soul. Each of us, in one way or another, encounter this dark night of the soul. Even people who have been in the practice for a long time. In fact, one of my students, whose Kensho was confirmed quite some years ago, still has this air of loneliness about him. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? Trap. It's just alone. No good and bad about that. Alone. And then he says, poor. I'm alone and poor. One way of defining poverty is not having enough to take care of the basic needs, our basic needs, such as food, shelter, clothing, etc., etc. Another way is having no or very few possessions. For those engaged in spiritual discipline, spiritual practice, like Zen, this poverty is a very desirable and necessary condition. In our Catholic upbringing, we have been told that um, religious, priests, nuns, monks, have three important vows before they become a full-fledged priest, nun, monk. And this consists of uh, chastity, obedience, and poverty. I don't know if it's in that order, but maybe you can say poverty, obedience, chastity, whichever order. But poverty is one of the most important vows that a religious takes up. For Buddhist nuns and monks, poverty is a given way of life. I don't think nuns and monks have a vow of poverty the way we have it in Catholic Church. But it's a way of life for them. Typically, a monk or a nun will have very few possessions. Probably a few clothes, bowls where they eat from, um, perhaps sandals or pair of shoes. Um, of course, their prayer book, maybe some meditation beads. Maybe in old days during times of the masters, probably a staff, long staff that they use when they go up a mountain and when they go to the fields to clear away snakes from their path. But very few, just this little possessions. Even when it comes to eating, as you know, most of the time, monks and nuns in monasteries only have 2 meals a day: breakfast and lunch. Maybe this was before that time when intermittent fasting became popular. No? But as a rule, they only had 2 meals a day. And normally, if they had the third meal of the day, that was the leftovers. They used the leftovers for the third meal of the day. And we practice this in Marikina. No? Whenever we have a session, you recall. The supper, the dinner, is composed of the tira-tira, the leftover of lunch. Um, Now, how did the monks of old sustain themselves? They worked hard in the fields. No, they had their own fields. And they had to plant the rice. Uh, Most of the time, just purely vegetarian. And there were times like other beggars. They'll go around the community begging for food, literally begging for food. This practice is called takohatsu. No? Takohatsu. In fact, in monasteries today in Thailand and even Japan, this practice continues. A certain time of the year, the monks go out, they're dressed in the robes, and they have a funny looking hat that covers most of the face. No? And they have their bowls. They go around the community. I have witnessed something like this in Laos when I was working for EDB. So this tradition, begging for food, continues until now. Now, what about Buddhist householders, lay people who have a spiritual bent? No? Meaning people who have families cannot be monks, but they are very interested. In fact, maybe they're practicing uh, something like Zen. Do they have a formal vow of poverty? Perhaps not. Most likely not. In both the Catholic religion and the Buddha Dharma, maybe even in Islam, I don't think there's a formal uh, commitment to poverty, except maybe for a few quasi-religious orders. No? Uh, at least in the Catholic Church, they might have something like this. But poverty itself is really deep-rooted in Catholic tradition. Do you remember the Sermon on the Mount? The eight great beatitudes? Uh, when we talk about poverty, immediately comes to mind from those for those of us who have a Catholic upbringing is the first beatitude. You remember Gospel? Saint Matthew and Saint Luke. The first beatitude goes like this: Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Oh, if I recall my catechism classes, you see, I was trained with the Benedictines and the Jesuits. No? So catechism was really a very important part of my upbringing. From catechism, we were taught to interpret this line, this sentence, as detachment from worldly goods. Detachment. So like saying it's okay to have material things, but do not get attached to them. And sometimes this statement, this fact, becomes abused to the point that some people think that to be religious, have to be away from this all, have to be otherworldly. But is this really the case? Now, one thing I can tell you, the practice of Zen does not espouse such otherworldliness. Otherworldliness is nothing but separation, separation, duality. What Zen practice brings to us is the true meaning of the verse beatitude. And indeed, to most of the teachings, most of the genuine teachings of Jesus Christ. Now, how does that relate to our practice? Maybe to my practice. Uh, uh, the first of the beatitude, poverty in spirit, can be summed up, if you ask me, in two words: absolute poverty. Absolute. No compromise. Absolute poverty. No, this is not an economic term, no? Because some of us might have worked with UN or maybe the World Bank, ADB, and these organizations have a way of defining poverty. They use mathematical formulas, economic indicators, etc., etc. What I'm talking about here, absolute poverty, does not depend on economic indicators. Does not depend on how long or how short one's bank account is. It's absolute, absolute, meaning it applies to every single one of us. Not just us here in our practice, in Zen, in our community, absolutely everyone in this universe. Everyone. Even Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Donald Trump. Every single one of them is absolutely poor, although they don't. Absolute poverty is a state that all of us are born with. If you remember, we were born naked, no, no clothes, no possessions, nothing, nothing. We were helpless. This condition actually stays with us throughout our life. Throughout our life. And we die into it as well. It, meaning absolute poverty, is a reality that has existed long before we were born, long before our parents were born, and long, long, long forward into the deep, unforeseeable future. What's more, this state is not limited to human beings. Modern science, modern physics is affirming that this condition penetrates the core as well as the periphery of every known substance, every known galaxy, all the forces of the universe. Absolute poverty. Now, when we catch a glimpse of our true face, we realize that our body, this body here, seems so solid. No? We realize that uh, this really has no real substance, nothing lasting. This book stand on which the laptop is resting on, very massive, no? Heavy, maybe 5 kilos. This has no weight, no weight, no form. This Zafu that we're sitting on, looks black, but it does not have any real color. This flower looks yellow, no? Does not have any color at all. As we become more and more intimate with our true self, our true nature continues seeing what it really is. Everything and around us, everything in and around us, has this quality of not having any physical permanence, form without form. In our prayers, no, Heart Sutra, we say form is emptiness, emptiness is form. What about form without form? Maybe as a minor koan by itself. Now, how many of us experience a barrage of thoughts, mm, fears, obsessive feelings during Zazen? All of us, right? All of us. Even Shakyamuni Buddha, when he was sitting under the tree, there was a time when he was sitting, he was barraged by such thoughts, temptations. Now, all these sensations, our sensations, thoughts, concerns, emotions, desires, fears, ambitions, they seem to be very real at the time. They capture our awareness. We get hijacked by them. But we spent the trying to fight off these thoughts, ambitions. But really, even this that seems so real, the definite quality of voidness, voidness. Although we can be enslaved by them and sometimes possessed for a long time, they fundamentally have no substance. After a good deal of sitting, we find that these thoughts and obsessions, they seem to be so real, but we find them to be just like clouds drifting to our mental screen. Clouds. If you look at the cloud, it's mostly air and moisture. But from afar, it looks and so sometimes you see shapes, animals in the clouds. But when you try to touch the cloud, can you grasp the cloud? Even time itself, time, don't have a watch, but time, tick tock, tick tock, which most scientists seem to measure with supreme precision. Now we have quartz clocks that can say this event lasted for a few billionths of a second. This is true in subatomic physics. Now, when they have these linear accelerators that deal with the subatomic particles, they can measure events in billionths of a second. But after a while, these measurements fail. Yes, they can pinpoint things like this. They can say that the sun rose exactly this time of the day, and it's going to set at this time of the day. But when the sun rises, what's the real fact? Does the sun wait for a clock to go down and rise below the horizon and sink beneath the horizon? No, the sun just rises and just sets. All these measurements, they're really artificial, based on maybe what we can say anthropomorphic attitude. No? Everything seems to revolve around man, our measurement, mankind's measurement. But in the greater scheme of things, does that really matter? Maybe for practical purposes, it's just a measurement to try to tie happenings together, to try to tie events together. But really, does it matter? In the great scheme of things. When you go into competition, Olympics, for example, and there's a race, marathon, 100-meter dash, swimming, records are set. No? So they say that this person broke the record of last year by so many fractions of a second. Well, very nice to hear. But in reality, what happened? We just swam faster than the other persons, just got ahead of them. Did the milliseconds count? Well, maybe if you're interested in such things, but in reality, he just got to the finish line faster, he or she. So now we can see that this continuum, what Yamada Roshi calls one existence, is really not bound by space and time. Not bound, not limited by space and time, not even defined by space and time. This reality pervades the entire universe. Really, we think about how old the universe is. How many billion light years one galaxy is from the other? Does it really matter? For that matter, can anybody really own anything in this limitless, borderless universe? maybe to make it simpler, limitless, borderless life, our life. Can it be limited? Of course, we say, oh, I was born on such a day, and maybe I'll die this day. But that's looking at things in a very short-sighted manner. Short-sighted. Um, Again, we say that, but going back to what Sensei was saying, uh, with such a limitless, boundless existence, can we claim to really own anything? Own, possess, have for myself? Can we really claim to do that? From this point of view, all of us cannot own anything. From this point of view, we, all of us, every single one of us, is absolutely poor. And I'm not talking about just bank accounts. I'm talking about owning everything we see with our eyes and ears, hear with our ears. Absolutely poor. Now, it's not what Sensei is referring to when he says, I'm alone and poor. Alone. Alone. We have already talked about alone and poor. Now we're seeing this poverty, not being able, much as we want to own anything. Given this backdrop, Sensei asks, when he goes to Sosan, I am alone and poor. I beg you, Master, please help me to become prosperous. Alone and poor. But this monk, Sensei, is a venerable. He's been practicing for a long time. Is he falling into some kind of trap? I'm alone and poor. Can he really see what he's talking about? Alone and poor. Alone, just me, poor, don't have anything. I beg you, Master, please help me to become prosperous. So he's asking a nice question. Is he sincerely asking to see this fact of I alone am the whole universe? Or is he setting a trap for Master Sosa? If we look at the commentary of Mumon here, he says that Seisei used an obsequious tone. Obsequious, an adjective meaning submissive or subservient. That's what Mumon used to describe Seisei's true state of mind. But yeah, he also asks us in the commentary to try to uncover Seisei's real intention. So the question arises: what is Sosan? What is Seisei trying to do? In what's his true state of mind? Has he gone to the valley of death, this dark night of the soul? Has he died the natural death, great death, great death? Meaning, has his body and mind completely fallen away? Or is he still wallowing in the dark valley of emptiness? I don't have anything, but I want something. You see that this condition, I don't have anything. I'm looking for something else, something more. I want to be prosperous. That's what the term he used. Whether prosperous spiritually, emotionally, of course, maybe not worldly, not physically, but please help me to become prosperous. I'm wanting for something else. That is the effect of his question. I don't know. I don't have anything. I'm like this patient in a COVID ward, alone. Nobody, not even my relatives, to visit me and cheer me up. I'm alone. I don't even know if I'm going to survive the next day, maybe the next hour with the ventilator inside me. Alone, poor. At this point, all my money cannot guarantee that I'm going to get well. Something like that, but maybe in deeper, um, more insidious way, because this is a spiritual question. I'm alone and poor. Please help me to become prosperous. In other words, maybe he's asking, please help me to break through to my true nature. Please help me to become prosperous. That's really the implication of this question. Please help me to become prosperous. It seems that my mind, my body have dropped away, but I'm not happy with this. I want certainty, facing my true nature, enjoying my true nature. So this is one possibility. But a lot of masters say that, oh no, he's really testing Sosan, seeing that, seeing if he could see through his intentions. But Sosan, remember, he's a very sharp master. He sees through this obsequiousness of Seizei. Or maybe he sees to something else. Maybe obsequious is a too drastic a term. Maybe he sees that this person is in need of one more tap for him to break through. One more slight, sampitik lang. And maybe that will really cause his universe to fall apart and wake up to a totally limitless universe. So he just says one word, two words actually, two words. Could have been one word, but he says, Venerable Zay. Maybe he could just have said, Say Zay. And Say at this point, maybe he was lost in his being alone and poor. He just replies, Yes, Master. Maybe expecting something else, no? Maybe expecting a great teaching, a turning word. Say, yes, Master. And Sosan at this point has turned the table, really. He's now in supreme command situation. Say, yes, Master. You said that you're alone and poor, but you have already drunk 3 cups of fine Hakka wine, and still you say you have not moistened your lips. Pause. Fine Hakka wine, that's probably one of the best beverages that you can find during the Tang Dynasty in China, late Tang Dynasty. Something like maybe if you compare it to today's standards, something like Chateau Petrus or Chateau Lafitte Rothschild. Do you remember a few, maybe a decade back, when Erap, our president, was throwing these huge banquets, and he was importing Chateau Petrus. If you want to pedestrian manner, Petrus. It's a French red wine named after Saint Peter. And one of these bottles, one bottle of this, I think costs something like $500 for one bottle. Well, maybe at that point, wine didn't cost so much. But Sosan is saying, you have already drunk 3 cups of fine wine, and still you say you have not moistened your lips. Very nice words. You haven't moistened your lips, although you've been drinking 3 cups. This priceless wine. Priceless wine. Now, the question comes, when did Seizei start drinking the wine? And how did he drink the wine? Remember, these are monks. No? They're not given to attending banquets and large parties. Maybe a few times, maybe when the emperor comes, maybe. But certainly, I don't think that they'd be drinking the best wine in the land. And Seshi is asking, please help me to become prosperous. You've already drunk the best wine in the land. So that's really one of the points that this koan has to make us taste, really clearly, taste as in tasting the wine. When did he drink the wine? Okay, so the koan ends here after saying, "You have already drunk three cups of fine wine." In other koans, usually there's an ending phrase, ending sentence, like, "At this point, he achieved great enlightenment, deepest enlightenment." Now, in this koan, there's no such capping phrase, no capping word. We don't know if Seisei had a deeper enlightenment. We don't know if even he had one. It ends here. And that is one of the questions that um, Mumon is posing upon us. Um, and this is something that I will not discuss in a Teisho. It will remain to be savored and examined in Dokusan. Now, in relation to the koan, to the question about being prosperous, attaining prosperity, if you want to put it in spiritual terms, attaining grace, enlightenment. Enlightenment is a grace, it's a gift. Um, what do the other teachings, koans, have to say about this? Well, we can refer back to one of the miscellaneous koans, no? And the one that talks about Dogen Zenji's instructions how to do zazen, Fukan Zazengi. And if you remember, I think the test Roshi gave a teisho on that early on during our lockdowns. And it's divided into 6 sections, I think. And the last section of that koan goes like this. The treasure chamber opens by itself, and one uses the treasure at will. To tell you the truth, and Sosan can see this very clearly. Seizei, all this, all this career, during all his career in the monastery, in fact, all his life, he has been using this treasure every day, every day. But he doesn't seem to be aware of it. From what he's saying here, I'm poor. Please make me prosperous. And again, my Catholic upbringing comes back. You remember this song we have been during the Mass? Tanging Yaman. Tanging Yaman. Unique wealth. In English, Tanging Yaman. Unique wealth. Uh, this is what Sesi is asking to really grasp in his hands. Although it's already in his hands. And it's not only him. No, it's the whole universe. It's really a treasure house, the greatest treasure house of anything else. How does it manifest? Well, when we're hungry, we eat. When we're sad, we cry. When it's hot, moisture forms, condenses into clouds, and falls as rain. Flowers bloom in spring and wither autumn. Humankind abuses nature and climate change ensues. How do we, each one of us, use our little treasure chamber? One last point needs to be emphasized. Solitude and poverty are the keys to the treasure chest. One can completely enjoy the limitless storehouse of our true nature to the extent of how poor we are. We can only enjoy these treasures if we become totally poor. It's because of, not in spite of, our absolute poverty that we can be free to be what we are, what we can be. we must appreciate this absolute poverty to the depths of our being, to taste the various flavors of our limitless true nature. On the verse, poor like Hantan, of a spirit like Ko, though they cannot sustain themselves, they dare to compete with each other for wealth. The first two lines are really historical. No? In the old days in China, there was a man, a person named Han Tan, who was a fortune teller, a wandering fortune teller. The irony is he could not foretell what would make him rich. So he became a wandering um, fortune teller to the point that he was so poor that he only lived in a cart with his family, traveling from town to town. So poor. Now, what's about Ko? Ko is the name of a famous general, again, during those times, who, until the last battle, was untouchable. He could not be defeated. But when he was about to fight his last battle, he found out that there was no way he could win. So, on the night before the last battle, in which he would surely die, he threw a huge fist. Such a spirit, no? I know I'm going to die tomorrow. I'm going to fight my best fight, but I know I'm going to die. So let's celebrate now. Such a spirit. Spirit, like as our directives say, no, before the session. People of great spirit. All of us who practice this way, people of great spirit. That's what this line is referring to. Spirit like Ko. Now, the last two lines are more applicable. No? Though they cannot sustain themselves, meaning, in this case, Seisei and Sosan, they both cannot sustain themselves. Absolutely poor. They dare to compete with each other for wealth. How are they competing for wealth when they know that they cannot sustain themselves? Well, let me end with this very nice story, no? Because I don't want to discuss this. It's going to become very intellectual. But maybe the best way to end this stage is to go into a very famous story about Master Ryokan. Master Ryokan is a Japanese Zen master who lived 900 years after Sosan and Seisei. Quite a long time, no? 100 years. Um, he was a Zen hermit. Ryokan was a Zen hermit. And he lived in a very small hut at the foot of a mountain. And one night when he was away, he was probably gathering food from the forest. Um, I think his favorite food were mushrooms, based on some other books. No? Mushroom. He was gathering mushrooms. And during the time he was away, a burglar went into his hut. And then, at that point, Ryokan returned and saw the burglar. Now, of course, being a hermit, there was nothing worth stealing in his hut. Poor man, poor monk. So the burglar was caught. Oh, Ryokan said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you must have come from a very long way to visit me." Look at the way he says it. You must have come for a long way to visit me. I'm sorry, but I don't have anything to offer you. Not in terms of nice food, anything you want for yourself. Of course, he meant anything you want to steal. No? But here, you can take my clothes as my gift. So that, come back to your home, to your family with something. At least take my clothes. So the burglar was shocked, the thief was shocked. But anyway, he took the clothes and he sneaked off, maybe feeling guilty. No? And then, naked and alone, again, naked and alone, uh, Ryokan went outside the hut and enjoyed the moon, the full moon. And he said, "Poor fellow, uh, He came to me wanting something. I could not give him anything. I wish I could give him this beautiful moon, naked and alone. I wish I could give him that beautiful moon. So thank you very much. I hope you don't look forward to the meal after the session. In the meantime, look down into yourselves, look deep inside yourselves, and see the aloneness and the poverty. Thank you.